Hello, my name is Seth Hindman, and I'm a manufacturing industry executive here at Autodesk. I thank you for joining today's session. For today, it's my pleasure to be with you to lead this conversation about some emerging trends that we see within our customers' businesses, trends which are closely tied to the challenges that they're currently facing. Now, there are several sessions that we're hosting with manufacturing customers. This specific session is entitled Winning Business and Developing Exceptional Products, a topic for which I hope it sparks some ideas about how it applies to your business and how you might approach your own challenges as a result of our conversation. Now, the first challenge that I wanted to talk about is how you differentiate your business through product customization. Now, one way to provide additional customer value while at the same time creating competitive separation is through the customization of your product to fit the exact needs of your customer. And that's easy for me to say, but for those of you that have attempted it, it is a big challenge. It's a challenge because it offers just as much risk as it does reward in terms of how you approach it, how you execute it. However, no matter how sophisticated or expensive your product is to manufacture, if you don't differentiate it from competition, over time it is at risk of becoming subject to commoditized pricing. There's always someone that's coming up that will copy your product or figure out a way to make it cheaper or provide some additional value that your customers willing to invest in. So if you take a look at the image shown here, you'll see an incredibly elaborate configuration table for a valve stack applied in the mobile hydraulic market. And you can see that in this example, it truly embraces the idea of offering a product that is intended for the customized configuration by an end customer. Now, the value of this approach is that the end customer can really focus on designing, developing an application or a machine without worrying about staying within the rigid confines of an existing valve offering. You know, the end customer really gets a custom control valve out of this deal without the cost of developing one from scratch on their own. Now, the key is to manage how customization occurs and empower your sales force or distribution channels to work within established boundaries for really what's possible and still profitable. Now, this table clearly articulates what's possible. Profitability, on the other hand, is much harder to evaluate. As you look at it, you can imagine that every configuration of every valve type, pressure setting, flow rate, seal type, fitting, drives different part numbers, different bills of material, and endless entries into their MRP or ERP system. I mean, thousands and thousands of permutations just on these 2 pages from their catalog. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, right? This is just the customer-facing aspect of configuration. How does this company go about creating assembly documentation, test procedures, model visualization, MRO instructions, or even handle each entry as it comes in their system? How does this company handle requests that exceed the values that are entered in the table? What if the customer truly wants something that's custom? Do they have a system that just supports configuration or assembly to order, as this table indicates, or do they have a really high power system, an enterprise level system that's capable of custom engineering to order or design to order? Now, the answer to these questions directly impact how information is communicated through your business. It indicates how well that information flow has been architected. How well can sales communicate to engineering and engineering to ops or manufacturing? This inherently impacts how much manual processing is involved in your business, and specifically how much of that manual process is imposed on the engineering teams that are involved. Now, for you, the products that you create may not be as simply captured as in these tables here. You might not be able to leverage a cut list or a configuration. You may be burdened by a product which is highly reliant on engineering for every single order. But my question for you is, how much of this engineering effort is repetitive? Does a person have to be involved in every single aspect, or is there an area in which you prefer you could focus them? Could this work be automated, at least to a certain scale? Now, For the benefit of the varied experiences of those customers who are on the call today, I've broken some of the symptoms that I mentioned that I'd be discussing into two different categories. One, those for businesses that have not begun customizing yet, and those for and another one for those that already have. This is all within the caveat that not all businesses have a customizable product. So the first one here is commodity pricing or falling margins. Like I said before, if you are winning on price alone, you're in a bad spot. And if your sales teams are always coming back and arguing that they need you to take a lower margin in order to win, that's not a long-term success model. Another might be customer attrition, long-standing customer starting to be lost to the competition. And this doesn't necessarily mean that the competition is underselling you. They may actually be selling at a lower price, but they may not be losing any margin over it because they may be inherently customizing their product and only shipping that which the customer finds value in. So if you only had one product and you shipped it to everybody, some would be underserved, some would be overserved. If you can figure out how to get the customer exactly what they want, you can leave some elements out of your design and protect your margins. And then the deal win-loss ratio is collapsing, where you're still bidding a lot, but you find that your losses are creeping up on you. You simply may be getting undercut by the competition or a new competitor that's breaking into your market. Now, for those that are already customizing, this doesn't necessarily mean that you have a lot of profitability in your business, and the wins that you're making might not be the ones that you necessarily want. One of the aspects you can find in there is a lot of backlog. Backlog breeds competition. If you're sitting there with a balance sheet where you have a bunch of customers waiting for a solution, they may shop around, and your competition may be able to poach some of those backlog customers off your sheets. Missed deadlines. If you are putting an incredible volume through your engineering teams, they will probably start just missing deadlines altogether. It's related to that backlog, but it's also about them not having the infrastructure set up to actually support a customized product offering. Margin volatility from one product to the next. You may be up or down depending on what it takes to put in that product to serve to your market. You may not have great insight or optics on what the real costs are, what it takes to get that product out. The worst example of this is project deficits, where you set your sales force up to actually bid on custom products, but they don't truly understand all the triggers that are involved in that cost and are underbidding. And so even though you won, when you get to the end, you actually realize you took a loss on the project and are not even breaking even. And then the last one there, bloating inventory levels. Some products aren't the best selection for being offered in a customized format. Some simply are too elaborate or sophisticated or have too long a lead time. To compensate for this, you might start bringing inventory onto your shelves so that you can react. This might not be good for your business and your carrying costs. And so as you start working through that table, you might start just finding that you're proliferating your shelves with all sorts of products so that you can fulfill it. So you need to think about an infrastructure that allows you to be a little bit more agile. Now, here are just some examples of industries that are already benefiting from configuration to order, engineering to order, engineering automation type solutions. As you look up here, you see like industrial process equipment, material handling, even like food and beverage and packaging equipment, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, anything with building efficiency, machines that need to be configured per job, fluid power systems, pumps, valves, hydrostatic transmissions, anything like that usually will be cataloged is a great contender for automation. You look down in the agriculture or construction market. I mean, imagine being able to configure exactly the vehicle that contractor who just won that bid wants to buy, just with the value that they see in it, but also with the infrastructure to be able to get it to them on time. And the last example there is of windows and doors, something that is highly configured per job. How well are you able to adapt and put the value into having your engineers or designers focus on the real elements? So the question for you to consider as you look through some of these industry examples is, could your specific business drive additional value to your customer and establish a competitive advantage by embracing customization? If so, Autodesk would be happy to have a conversation with you about how we could help you do this while at the same time preserving or improving your profitability. Depending on the level of automation you desire, we have solutions that span the spectrum from simple product configuration all the way down to those high-end enterprise-level rule-based design to order, engineering to order applications. These systems can be customized to support the needs of your sales force, your engineering teams, or even provide an order entry interface directly to your customers. It really just depends on what you want to prioritize first, the front end or the back end system. Now, besides being able to create a competitive advantage through customization, sometimes you simply need to be able to operate around the globe in order to compete and win. You need profitable growth in your business, and it can't just be expansion. From time to time, I think about James Ray and his book, Harmonic Wealth. And in this book, he coined this phrase. He said, if you're not growing, you're dying. And I think that's really true. And it happens from time to time that growth is unexpected. It's a really welcome surprise. But most commonly, growth is the result of some very careful planning and a strict attention to the bottom line. A little over a decade ago, companies were running all over the world building out fiber optic networks. And they were doing this as quickly as they physically could manage. And one of the results of these efforts was really the mainstream globalization of communications. This wasn't just voice. Impactfully and more importantly, it was data. And one of the the initial ideas that companies struck upon was the idea of offshoring, that they could leverage offshore companies to manufacture complete products remotely and then ship them to the point of sale. And many of the companies who pursued this approach failed, and there were many reasons and factors for this, but not the least was the disconnection between engineering, quality, and manufacturing teams, this ability to communicate. And this was a really volatile, challenge for companies to bring their products to market with predictable margins on time, with the level of quality that they had already established for their brand. Now, on the flip side, a silver lining was that it wasn't necessary to just focus on the manufacturing capacity of these emerging markets. It was now possible to incorporate engineering teams from around the globe, teams that could either participate in the development of a centralized product or project, or in a localized product that now targeted the emerging market in which those teams were located. It's actually where we stopped saying emerging countries, and we started thinking of these places as emerging markets, places where they wanted their own products, they wanted their own customization. Now, governments have also taken notice of this distributed engineering capability, and in some cases have mandated a certain percentage of not just manufacturing content like it used to be, but actual localized engineering within the country of question. Now, this mandate has in many cases outpaced the capability of established platforms to support a design anywhere, a manufacture anywhere, simulate anywhere methodology. They're simply too costly and infrastructure prohibitive. They're just really big systems that are not meant for to move into new places. So regardless of the size of your company or your business unit, ensuring that your teams can collaborate effectively is going to be a constant challenge. Being able to focus your teams on their core competencies with tools that facilitate their work is essential. But the question is, how well do those tools perform at bringing the outputs of each team together? Can your teams work concurrently on a project regardless of the size of that project? Can global teams leverage best practices or reuse design elements? Or are you always designing from scratch every single project? Can you manage change and revision without there being a lot of confusion and a lot of delay? Can you go anywhere and spin up operations and still maintain the best practices of your organization? Or is it pretty much a grab bag every time? Now, if I look at some of the symptoms that I often attribute to them, this is not always true, but it's something for you to think about in terms of what you're doing to go win business in new areas and develop your products on a global footing. Design recreation replication, and by this I mean you hear that your engineering teams have gotten some information from another part of your business or maybe a supplier, and they're redesigning it or they're remodeling it, which is the worst thing. They're remodeling it just so that they can have it in a file format that they can consume. This often strikes that there is no communication capabilities or a consistent platform of tools within your business. Part number bloat. If you're designing from scratch every time, if there is no way to actually share best practices or information or even part numbers and components within your business, you're going to see an incredible number of parts that actually specify the exact same thing. You have duplicates in your system. High shipping costs. If you have to manufacture at a core competency centers and you cannot actually build or get supply chain to leverage products and components in different localities where you want to manufacture, you wind up shipping all over the world. You wind up having to serve your customers from core centers versus being able to have a diversified footing, leveraging best practices. Numerous independent subsidiaries. You know, it's true that many of our customers out there have bought companies who have good brand recognition and they want to continue to keep those brands. It's equally as true, I think, in many cases that there's a lack of capability to incorporate those acquisitions into their core business and leverage, really what is the lifeblood or core intelligence of that company. They can't use the best practices. The teams can't communicate. They can't leverage a unified supply chain, and therefore they need to operate as independent subsidiaries in order to maintain their profitability. Regional quality issues. Even though the brand is well known in one specific country, they have a very poor reputation because there is nothing of the parent company that has come across in the development or manufacture of that product. And this is all down to communication. Lost and missing data. If there isn't a single point of source of truth, if there isn't a repository or a platform of collaboration in which business can use, they are missing data. They're leveraging drives on separate desktops of engineers, and there is no repeatability to the information. There's no way to access it, and it's very common to just wholesale lose designs. And if you have an opinion that it's really expensive to leverage the supply chain, that means that supply chain is in no way incorporated in your business. It's not able to operate as an extension of your business. It's all manual. It's all looking at how much scrap comes out of that supplier because they had the wrong drawing revision and there was no way for them to access it. You're having to constantly manage POs. You're constantly having a manual process of bringing them into the fold and having to deliver components for you. So expensive supply chain can be yet another wrinkle in what you're looking at. So what these symptoms are really talking about are the barriers that keep you from beginning the process of fundamentally improving the performance of your globalized engineering organization, or better than that, your business as a whole. And the things that keep you from becoming more agile or flexible in the development of your products, as well as the location in which they occur, your ability to win and compete anywhere in the world. So businesses who might be interested in a different approach to how they can improve this performance would be those that are interested in integrating a supply chain as a natural extension of their business, whether that be inside or outside the firewall. Those that are looking to expand their footprint into new localities for bringing on engineering or manufacturing teams for either work on concurrent projects or for the manufacture of a localized product for that specific market. For companies that are looking to improve the performance and the collaboration between sites and establish best practices throughout the world, regardless of where those teams are located. For teams that need to be able to find, share, and reuse design data so they're not creating it from scratch every single time. And so those teams can actually focus on work that is seen as valuable use of engineering resource. Leveraging things like the cloud to expand access to remote locations without the burden of infrastructure. Because is it really in your core business interest to have that infrastructure, or is it just a means to an end? As well as businesses that want to connect more of their workforce into the process. And we talk about this process, we talked about this coordination of all the aspects of your business so that they can work together in the pursuit of developing your product. And this doesn't just happen. A bridge or platform must be put in place to facilitate it. And these are really the fundamentals that have shaped Autodesk's vision of why we've built out the design solutions for engineering, product data management, collaboration, as well as PLM the way we have. So if you're looking at to seize the opportunity and take advantage of these kinds of capabilities to improve your ability to develop exceptional products and win that business, then again, we'd be interested in having a conversation with you. The last trend that I'm going to talk about today is analysis-driven design. Better decisions equal better results. And this is all about insight into the design. And this is really an explosive trend. This is an area in which we, as well as our competitors, are seeing fundamental growth and interest from our customers on how they can apply this to their business. And the reason that is that many manufacturers have been through some pretty rough times over the last couple years, and those that have survived are looking at how they can transform the products they develop. How can they improve their performance, their manufacturing, their operations in general? And so we're seeing, as we look at analysts who track investments made by our customers worldwide, we're finding that there's a growth of the simulation analysis space by about twice that of traditional engineering platforms. And this is simply because customers are looking to do things differently. Those that have never used analysis before are deciding that they're willing to try it. If they believe that it was too hard, too expensive, too hard to apply to the custom nature of their business, they've now realized that their competitors are doing it and they simply have to get on board. Those customers who have dabbled with some analysis before, maybe some static stress, now they want to figure out how they can incorporate heat, fluid flow, cooling. How can they use plastic parts? How can they analyze those? So they want to leverage more. They want to start understanding how to build a multi-physics model that more accurately represents how their product performs in a digital form. Now, those same analysts who track the spend on simulation analysis tools also have lots of commentaries, folks like Deloitte and SimData and the like. And when we read through there, we find that there's very similar topics, ones that I think resonate with you. Tightening budgets, increasing expectations on performance and quality and reliability. And the trick is that it's incredibly challenging for manufacturers to fundamentally improve the level, the quality level, the performance level of their product without extending the development timeline that they currently have. I mean, if you're trying to revolutionize something about your product but are leveraging the historic mechanisms in which you develop your product, it doesn't sound like a formula for success. So, one of the things that manufacturers get trapped with is that you wind up really producing that first iteration of your product that meets the specification to an acceptable level, right? So you start to develop a product with maybe physical prototyping methodologies, and after one starts to look like it's going to work, you really need to push that thing to market. The alternative is what you might have wanted to do was to optimize that design, to really punish it, to understand its performance. But that's very hard without overcoming really the simple linear nature of a traditional workflow for product development and change management. So one of the things that you might start looking at is some of the symptoms that are in your business to find out if simulation seems like an applicable avenue for you to approach. The obvious ones are quality and reliability issues. If you don't have great insight into what really makes your product tick, what are the fundamental critical characteristics for manufacturing it, these elements can get away with you, and product variation and component variation and tolerancing will wind up beating you up in the field. Warranty claims and field failures. Simply, if you did have to manufacture that first working version, you may not have been able to fully punish it on all the different ways that you can use it. You might try to grow your business and start selling into new geographic locations, and just that alone can hurt you, because you start getting into things like a narrow performance envelope. If you do have that first version that worked, and you don't realize that in the entire envelope that you want to sell it in, you're barely inside the box, then it's easy for you to be knocked out of it. If you are able to spend the time to actually optimize your product to understand really what makes it tick, you can recenter that a little bit and give yourselves a much broader performance envelope and remove yourself from costly field failures or reliability as mentioned above. Competitive preference. If you can build a brand around having a product that simply works, inevitably you will gain some competitive preference. You start to build brand, and that's something that you may lose if you're starting to exhibit this lack of reliability. These problems, failures. Are hard to put a price on because they impact the bottom line of your company, but if they impact things like personal injury or liability, that impacts your brand prestige, and that's pretty much as bad as it could get. High material costs. For those that really aren't able to look into how their product performs in its reality versus just urban legend and rules of thumb. You may be putting a lot more material into every design that goes out the door. You also probably have a low ability to adapt to different kinds of material that you could use to replace them in your product. Over the last decade or so, you've seen a lot of composite materials, a lot of plastics coming in replacing metal, aluminums, and steels that are in there. If your insight is really rule of thumb, you may be really restricted to the traditional materials you have, which means that you're just shipping money out the door. A heavy product, heavy shipping costs, and that's definitely an industry I personally came up from. When you design your product, but your engineering leader looks over your shoulder and says, "Looks great, just thicken it up," and then that's all just based on experience. You need analysis to be able to evaluate different kinds of materials. And then the last one, there are manufacturability challenges. How well are you able to evaluate variance in your process? If you are leveraging plastics, how well are you able to identify the manufacturability of that plastic component, how it's going to fill, how it's going to freeze, is it going to have a defect, and what's the impact of that? So all of this insight and collaboration in your process is critical for you to be success. So these are just some of those symptoms that could lead you back to believing that simulation is a wise investment for you. So who needs simulation? Now, as this image continues to build out, you might get the impression that there is a wide applicability throughout a diversity of industries that could benefit from simulation. It's actually Autodesk's specific perspective that anyone who makes anything needs simulation. Every known manufacturer has a requirement for their product to perform and not to fail, and a responsibility to their company, to their shareholders, and to their customers to remove risk from that product and ensure performance. So, what does Autodesk do to help in this situation? How do we intend to ensure that our customers, regardless of their industry, have access to pragmatic solutions that can really help you drive the specific needs that you have today that you want to focus on? Well, going back to the beginning of this specific trend, we very much believe that better design insight drives better decision, which results in exceptional products. Now, this premise led us to create integrated capabilities between our design and analysis solution. And this has really resulted in a true engineering platform that's capable of delivering upfront analysis without the cost impact of disconnected change management. We've actually invested over $500 million into our simulation analysis portfolio to make sure that we have the right capacity, the right kinds of solutions for our customers. Now, we've taken that further by leveraging the power of the cloud to enable engineering teams to evaluate infinite variation, and the infinite variation in parallel. Being able to take all those different ideas about how I can improve my product and apply them to the cloud all at the same time, so that you can actually get that design that you really wanted to take to market instead of just the first one that passed. So that concludes this session discussing some prevalent trends that we're seeing in our customers' businesses. I hope it sparks some ideas, some thoughts, potentially even some actions that you might want to take in your own organization. I want to thank you again for investing the time to participate with me today. And I want to make one request of you before you leave. I'd like you to consider how integral Autodesk is as an active partner in the pursuit of your specific business objectives. likely you could challenge us to do more. You're probably not aware of the tremendous capabilities that our portfolio, our industry solutions, and expertise could offer. Thanks again.